Hi, I'm Andy.
That was brilliant.
Welcome, everyone, to the Profound Decisions game team Ask Me Anything. This is definitely going to be a more professional appearing thing as time goes on.
Are we recording this?
We are recording this. Now, let's see, I am inverted, so I can do what I like. So here we have Andy, as you can see, who is... Andy, do you want to tell people a bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Andy. I'm part of the game team for Profound Decisions. I'm lead writer. There's probably we could just direct people to the 3 questions videos now that Clare has finally done hers after months of badgering.
Up here we have Clare.
Hi, I'm Clare. I'm part of the game team. My role is mainly in player support and managing our on-field NPCs.
I am Graeme. I'm finance director and head of rules. And finally we have...
Hi, I'm Matt. I am in charge of stuff. I'm on the game team. I sort of take an overarching role, basically. I'm the calling shot when we can't agree on things.
Cool. And I believe we have some questions. Andy, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, although I would like to point out that I am the person who only has 1 monitor. So unlike some of the other people on this call who have 2, but I'm just saying that, not in a passive-aggressive way, I'm just pointing it out. So Dave Lowry says, when shifting from Omega to Maelstrom, Matt, you wanted the big bad necromancer to be a player, not an NPC. This empowering of players continued into Empire, as you gave them the levers of power. What comes next in this evolution or vision? And I can hear us.
Yeah,
it's me.
I'm going to wait for
everything.
Claire to...
I'm ruining everything. Okay, I've unruined everything.
Yay. Yeah, it's a really interesting question, that. And the answer is, I don't know. I genuinely have no clue at all what comes next in the evolution. And I think that's kind of interesting, because I think if I did know, either we would be putting that into Empire even as we speak, or if it just wasn't compatible with Empire, that would be the moment, in theory, where you might start thinking about creating another game. At the point where you realise, you know what, there's a better way to do this. There's a vision for a better thing, and that's the point you start trying to create a new game, I think, or at least in part in your head, a new game starts to take shape. And there's no new game in my head. I don't have kind of a radical step in my mind about, this is where it goes. And that might just be because I've been art games for 25 years, so I'm kind of all out of radical ideas. I don't know. But I don't have anything. I genuinely, and I see that as a positive, because there's nothing where I'm looking at Empire and thinking, oh no, this isn't right. This could be done better. I don't know what you think, Andy.
In terms of empowering players, I think you hit it when you said the first time around. If we could think of something we could do to empower players more, we'd find a way to move it into Empire, because that is, after all, our main design goal when we're designing this thing, is give us players as much freedom to do stuff as we possibly can. Yeah. Have either of you two got anything to add?
I think you've done yourselves down a bit there. You keep saying if we could, and I think that we are constantly changing and adapting. So when you do, we implement it.
That's true, but I think if you look at a lot of the changes we've done since the game was launched, they've tended to be evolutionary rather than revolutionary. They've tended to be refinements. I mean, sometimes we'll break something down and build it up again from scratch, but it's still building on, I think, the core paradigms of Empire. There's nothing in there that I think is a paradigm shift that has been brought in since the game started. I think I'm right in saying that. So I don't know what the next. Let me know. If I see it, if I go to a game and think, this is it, then that'll be interesting.
On the subject of players, Richard Fannon asks, other than booking early, taking their rubbish home with them, and ensuring they stick to the rules, what's one thing an individual player could do to make the event better?
So, as I said, I would jump in on this. Before we get to answering the actual question, I want to talk about the 3 things that he said not to talk about, because those 3 things are all pretty important. So, booking early, the reason why booking early is important, it's mostly due to the fact that if we can make your packs up before we get to site, it's a lot easier on our god staff and a lot quicker for you once you come through than if we need to make your packs up during the event and try and pull stuff together. It's just a lot easier for us in every regard. Litter is, of course, a constant and horrifying problem. I think we now have an entire team to deal with, Matt.
Yeah, we do. If you take your litter home, you get more winds of fortune and cooler winds of fortune.
And following the rules is always important. Always important.
We're laughing, but those things are really important.
Anyway, on to the actual question.
Yeah. I put a link on the question when they originally asked it for Bill and Ted, them going, be excellent to each other. And again, it's easy to mock that and laugh, but I think there is both a superficial level at which playing in a way that respects your fellow players and assumes good faith and, treat people well is a positive. I think we should all do that in all aspects of life. But actually in live role playing, it's particularly important because it's a social hobby. You are everybody else's NPC. So the more enthusiasm and passion you bring to the game and the more dramatic that your interactions with other players are, the more enjoyable their game will be. And actually, the more passion they'll bring and the more enjoyable your game will be. So I think that be excellent to each other is both superficially kind of anodyne, but also expresses a kind of deeper truth about how you should live role play and the best way to approach live role in terms of making a good game for yourself and everyone else.
I've got a sort of negative positive for this.
Ooh, controversial.
If you're not having fun or something's wrong, tell someone. Because so many times, sort of when I'm reading things after an event, I see somebody complaining about something we could have fixed.
It's a common thing I've heard a lot. Sort of like, PD must know this is a problem, and sort of like, that is often not true. We are not out there as much as we would like to be because we're physically limited by the bounds of physics. So, yeah, don't assume that we know there's a problem somewhere and that we don't care about it. Frequently, the reality is we do care about it. We just don't know.
Yeah, and even on sort of problems that you think are far too small a scale for us to help, like being too cold or your tent getting flooded or not being able to find something that you enjoy doing or not knowing who to speak to about something. We've got so many processes and people in place to help with these things, but we can't help if we don't know.
Yeah.
Those are all very worthy things players can do. But I would like to jump in with some slightly more controversial. You should say yes to any opportunities that are offered to you in the field. The crazier they sound, the better. You should always escalate whenever you're in a situation where you could escalate. And you should never compromise, except where compromising is the last thing people expect you to do. And that would make the game better for everybody. It would certainly make it better for me.
Okay. What's our next question?
Oh, I keep forgetting I'm comparing. Sorry, I'm trying to do 2 things at once. I'll stop multitasking because if I've learned anything, I definitely can't multitask. Rebel Deets asks, what magic would you like to see more of on the field? And you're not allowed to say the magic of sharing.
Friendship. Friendship is magic.
No.
Is it friendship? I'm sorry.
Friendship, yeah.
It's neither friendship nor sharing. Nor
Dramaturgy.
both in disguise, for that matter.
Can I say dramaturgy?
Okay. Go on.
I
Then.
love dramaturgy. I absolutely love it. Every time I see somebody doing a dramaturgic ritual, it just looks fantastic. And I'd love to see more wackier dramaturgy, like puppets and stuff like that.
I want to see more offensive combat magic. I think it's underused. I think it's a good tool to be used, and I think it is done down. Frequently, the most common reason I hear it being done down is because it is you can't wear plate while doing it, and it's like, yes, you can't wear plate while doing it, but that doesn't make it valueless.
Matt?
I'm
Sorry.
going to answer. I don't know what. I don't get out enough and see the field enough to be able to say what is and isn't used. I've got that kind of long distance view of what's going on. I'm zoomed out, so
Magic, somebody has paid more than they can afford for.
Oh, you want vanity magic?
Possibly, but I'd also really like to see a lot more wizards taking the golden pyramid approach and demanding cash in return for their magic.
I really enjoyed a piece of magic involving one of the Eternals and some large numbers of smashed mirrors. That was a piece of magic that I particularly enjoyed. Their hand
Definitely cost more than people could afford to pay for.
shaken for making the game better for everyone. They were winners of the Matt's Magic Trophy of Awesome for that event. So more of that is what I'd like to see.
Oh God, I've just seen what the next question coming up is, and given
You've sold it so well, Andy.
given you've put me in as compere, my urge is to leap ahead and not answer it. So Sam Bradley and Oz Mills have both asked basically the same question. What thing most inappropriate to the Empire setting do you sometimes wistfully wish you could put in but can't because the other showrunners won't allow it? Yeah, you're all laughing. I'm going to put my serious face on. I'm timing this. You've got 5 minutes.
I assume that Graeme has gone to get a prop for this question. I'm hoping any minute now a small rat is going to appear in the we had an argument when the game was being created about whether we would have Skaven in the game, which we lost. And then we had another argument, which we lost.
How did we lose? We keep losing this argument, despite the fact that at the time it was just you, me, and Andy, and we were 2-on-1.
Well, that's the interesting thing.
To be fair,
makes better arguments than we do.
The most recent argument we had, which was at the very beginning of the year, I said maybe, but not to Skaven.
But not Skaven.
So was it goblins?
It was not goblins either, Claire. Thank you.
Skaven are brilliant. I genuinely think they're one of the most original Games Workshop creations. I think that some elements are a bit overcooked. All the sort of warpstone, the bit where Wheels of Death gets a bit OTT, but just the central conception of a race of rats, humanoid rats, living beneath the cities, waiting to pour out and consume the cities. It's a rich concept, and I actually think it's a really concept. I don't think you can trace it back to other kind of classic myths, and yet at the same time it has a lot of resonance. That imagery of the great horn rat, that 3-stick symbolism, which kind of looks like a rat's head, but it's really, really powerful stuff. And I think Skaven are wonderful. They are disruptive, and they are a really interesting fantasy race. And we always lose the argument, because they are deeply and profoundly resonant. You can't have Skaven without having the Great Horn Rat. You can't have Skaven without having Warpstone. You can't have Skaven without Rat Ogres and Clan Moulder and Clan Eshin and all the rest of it. And actually, if you look at Empire, what we tried to do was take resonant ideas and classic fantasy ideas and reimagine them, work them, so that they would feel familiar but new. And it's really hard to do that with. And the reason it's hard to do it is because Games Workshop are pretty much the only people who do Skaven as Skaven. So they haven't blurred. There isn't a whole mythology for it. It's the Great Horn Rat and Warpstone. Nothing.
Orcs come in a lot of different flavors, by contrast. From Tolkien orcs to Warhammer orcs to World of Warcraft orcs. Like, there are a lot of different flavors and takes on orcs. In a way that there just aren't with Skaven. It's
So
We had some genuine worries early on. It's worth noting, just on because I'm not utterly irrational on Skaven. We had some worries early on about whether we were going to be able to decouple our orcs successfully from the Games Workshop boys. And one of my arguments was that I felt that having one fight at a time might save us a lot of emotional energy.
Also, the spelling of orcs was a conversation that we had over a few hours. There's a reason orcs are spelled with a C and not with a K. It's because
it's the correct spelling.
Because if you use orcs with a K, that's Warhammer 40k orcs. There's a sort of a very Wazdaka feel to them, which we do not want or have any desire for. Not in this game.
With Empire, go on, Andy.
No, go on.
You're trying to build a consistent, coherent mythology through Empire. You want elements that come together very naturally and feel like a system. There's nothing worse than a setting where writers have just got this beautiful, rich, consistent, coherent setting, and then they bolted on their favourite fantasy crap onto the side of it, or it's some downloadable content, or it's the latest splat book of, we just thought we'd stick Skaven in. Really? It doesn't fit with anything. It doesn't, there's no, So
I could draw some parallels with a popular other species that doesn't appear in our games. That feels just bolted onto other large fest systems.
Yeah, don't.
As a brief aside, because I suspect someone might have just done something. If one of the three of you have added me in Discord, I can't look at it without crashing the stream.
Cool, good to know.
So if you're trying to message me secretly through that, you're not going to get me.
So at the same time that I was fighting people who wanted to add Skaven to the game, I was also having to fight Claire.
Me?
Yes, and Matt. Because you wanted to add something else to the game.
Did we?
Is this goblins?
Yeah, goblins.
Goblins. Wave your daggers.
The thing is, right, everybody loves goblins.
Do they though?
Do they though?
And having orcs is fine, but you need the brains of the green skin operation there as well.
Yeah, but no one's considering snotlings.
This is what I have to put up with.
The two of my favourite characters that I've played in LARP, well, one was a Skaven, and one was a Hobgoblin. There's just such rich veins of role playing that you can tap. But again, goblins. It's really hard to get goblins without getting Games Workshop green skin goblins. Certainly, when I played a Hobgoblin, it was my starting point for them, and I was playing with people whose starting point was a similar point. And it doesn't. We want something different. Let's move on.
I didn't have anything that nobody would let me add because I'm brilliant.
Andy would just add stuff while we were listening.
Anyway.
Yes, okay, no, that is. I was just
Not in while I wasn't looking.
Yeah,
how is the King in Yellow these days, Andy?
The King in Yellow is not technically appearing in this movie until Matt pointed out that it was coincidentally in because of the traditional classic colours of the humours in Greek medicine. It was a complete coincidence. I was quite startled by it because I've been very careful to hide my fingerprints more carefully. Sam Bradley asks, do you have a favourite group? So who wants to start with this one? Matt?
Me, All About Eve. I went to see them when they were the first band I ever saw. Yeah, damn,
I was going to wear the t-shirt.
Their albums, including the ones that are discontinued, and all the live albums. I've even got their Christmas special, their cover of Wham's Last Christmas. So that's how big an All About Eve fan I got their cover of Wham's Last Christmas.
My favourite groups are all mostly more or less from the 90s. I don't see any reason to update my musical taste, but they would include people like Nirvana, New Model Army, the Foo Fighters, and a certain amount of the right kind of not quite Britpop. So your Garbage, maybe your Blur if I absolutely have to, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to go Face No More.
Oh,
Alice in Chains,
Yeah.
The Wild Hearts. And honestly, my first love is and always will be Iron Maiden.
I'm not.
Graeme.
I'm not a big consumer of traditional music. I mostly stream stuff on YouTube. It tends to be, honestly, mostly anime soundtracks.
That's because you're the young person on the team.
I'm not entirely sure this was what Bradley meant by this question, but I feel we've answered it, so let's press on.
It's the answer he's getting. Why is there a sinkhole? Asks Sam Bradley from a game design perspective. Andy, I think that Andy is quite accusatory in some ways. For some reason, he has decided that I am responsible for the sinkhole, based purely on the fact.
The question is, why aren't there more sinkholes?
Why aren't there more sinkholes? So I sold the sinkhole on 2 and a bit solid selling points. First of all, there was an annoying crossroads up in the north western part of the map that offended me and made cross empire movement weirdly easy. It was the crossover because you could go diagonally in theory between these 4 territories. I also hinted that a sinkhole is the kind of thing that Skaven might be responsible for, but at the last minute I did a bait and switch and reminded Matt that the Trigoni existed and were a much better explanation for the giant sinkhole. Basically, it's really quite prosaic. We had a thing that I wanted to get around to sorting out, the ability to move diagonally between Miaran and Harnmark, and I've managed to come up with a good in-character explanation as how we could do it and generate a little bit of plot and put something into the game that players could do stuff with further down the line. I think it was reasonably successful, but it also meant that I made the mistake of reading up on sinkholes, and now I live in constant existential dread of sinkholes.
They can just open up.
They can just open up, yes. It's
They can
because
just,
the world is kind of hollow. There you go. Well, not hollow in a crazy hollow way, but there's just lots of big openings underground that can collapse at any moment.
Yes, that's true.
Oh no, I'm afraid again.
It's a good job you don't live in the north where there's lots of mine shafts.
Yes,
Yeah,
loads of
it's
centuries, millennia of mine shafts under the ground, or up in the Lake District where there are loads of underground watercourses, just constantly just eating away at what we imagine as solid. What part of the game, asks Pel Piercy, I think he's a new player, what part of the game has surprised you the most in a good way?
I can go on this.
Go.
Yeah.
The Academy. I was part of the horrified masses at the idea of having children at a large live-action role-playing event, and I think the game would be a lot worse without the Academy and having them around. I just love it.
Mine is the Synod. I'm really pleased by how many players care so much about our made-up religion that they are prepared to kill other players over it and die themselves. I think it's been really. It was risky putting in a religion that didn't have gods or spirits telling you what to do. Was instead based on a bunch of philosophies, and I think it's worked really well. I'm really pleased with what players have done with it.
I think for me, it's the Senate viewing gallery. We kind of built that thing without really ever thinking about it, but just thinking, maybe the person will want to go in and watch what's happening. And often when I've been down there, it's absolutely rammed.
It's generally rammed.
And I can't shake the suspicion that 2 of them, it would also be full, one on either side. And I think that's really nice because, often politics can be quite dry, and particularly if you're not actively involved in it. If you're not engaged with that issue or pushing or pulling on it, then it's not as fun to watch as a battle. So I was really, I'm pretty pleased with the fact that players are sufficiently engaged with the game. They'll actually go and literally watch the Senate happen. It's very cool.
Graeme?
Pass.
Right, okay.
I'd have used the Senate as well, but no, carry on.
Okay, so Shredney Vashtar asks, is there a complete list of what army or navy qualities are possible per imperial nation or barbarian nation? If not, can you explain the process as to how players can predict such things?
I'm out on this one.
It's game design, isn't it? Matt?
It is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is a list. Aware of one. I mean, Graeme might have a precise list.
We're really careful with definitive lists. Just to go over a slight tangent. It's one reason, for example, that we'd never provide the Empire with a definitive list of every title that's ever existed in the game.
Yeah. While in theory these things might exist, in practice, all they really do is limit our opportunities to create cool stuff further down the line. So if we go, this is the definitive list of every quality that Dawn can ever have, or Brushka can ever have for its armies. And then 2 years down the line, wicked idea for a plot in which we could offer Dawn the opportunity to get this cool new army quality. then we can't run it because we go, oh, that's not on the definitive list of qualities we had. So effectively, that the moment you put limits and go, yeah, this is it, this is the list, you kind of reduce the potential for plot and engagement and for the game to grow and expand, gain new ideas and be able to engage with that. So any definitive lists are always a bit difficult because they circumscribe your imagination, limits on it, which I think is unappealing. We don't have lists of like, oh, these qualities for this nation, just, you know, endless lists. Generally, I think the qualities largely, you know, when a new army is raised, we offer about half a dozen qualities it can have.
It tends to be a reasonable plot opportunity, particularly these days. We tend to handcraft a couple of new qualities whenever that kind of thing comes in, because it makes the newer armies seem cooler and more interesting, which they are.
Yeah.
The year in which we got, year and a half in which we ran a bunch of opportunities in response to synod statements of principle to allow the nations to tweak their armies to make their armies more unique and stuff like that. That was a really good, I think, exercise, in my opinion, for getting us for a better feel for how qualities are going to work.
And then we tend to run plot as well because we look at what the players want. So I remember when Dawn was raising a new army, they were really keen to have the magic quality, which is obviously like a kind of archetypal Uruzeni quality. But Dawn are a very high fantasy nation. They're a very magical nation. And there was a kind of legitimate argument, well, the Uruzeni wizards are going to teach us. And we were like, okay, well, we'll run a plot. So we ran a plot with the Horde. The Urizen found a great hoard of mithril weapons. And if I remember correctly, they had the opportunity to either make their own army cooler and bigger and stronger, or teach the Dornish how to have an enchanted army, a magic army. And they wisely chose to make their own army bigger and stronger. So we gave out the option for that army to have magic quality, but players chose different. But we kind of try. We just try and effectively we try to go with what makes sense and pick up the zeitgeist of what's happening in the game, and try and offer qualities we think are cool, and at least one new quality that is usually one new quality that's kind of, you know, exciting. But it's meant to be plot. It's not meant to be a board game. It's not Car Wars. You can't sit down and build your car and load it up with 4 recoilless rifles on the front. And it's not a war game. It's a role-playing game.
If I had my way, and if I had my time again, I would make sure, and we're moving towards that, I would make sure every army was unique.
Yeah,
That was menacing.
I think we're getting close to that now.
We're certainly getting closer. I'm really pleased by the experiments we did with a couple of narrative qualities.
Yeah.
So the Winter Sun's ability to rally oppressed peoples if they're fighting in a nation is the obvious example.
The ability for the Wintermark armies to simply put a stop to any fun happening in the territory.
Yeah, on their own side. Yes.
Yes.
And we see that to a degree in some of the things that aren't quite qualities, like the March. The March would be a bad example. The Wintermark ability to, when they fight the Jotun, they do less casualties, but they gain more victory points, or the stuff that's developed in play in which some of the nations show their opposition to the cruel tactics of the Iron Helms in a mechanical, supportive way without needing new qualities. So we're always tweaking that kind of battle stuff, and I think we're getting to a reasonably good place with it.
But it's never going to be a prediction thing. We're never going to release a set of tables and you can look it up and go, well, I want this quality.
It's not in our interest to have everything pre-decided. Like, stuff has to be decided in game.
Yeah.
And that isn't going to include stuff coming up that you weren't expecting, and that is what that is.
Yeah.
Just having a look at the stuff here. Oh, I should have asked this one earlier when we were talking about Skaven. What is the design idea behind the other humanoid species that live only in faraway, unplayable lands? Asks Scott Anderson. He suspects a bunch of it is Foyt, but it does make him wonder every time he gets reminded they exist. I think he's talking about Deva, because I think they're the only other humanoid species we have. Sorry, officially.
What is their design purpose?
I just thought they'd be cool.
Yeah, they'd be cool.
We'd
cool.
stick them in. We'd make them something the Commonwealth did to make them a bit more interesting, and we'd worry about what they actually were. We know what they.
Got a bunch of ideas.
We've got some very solid ideas about what they are. We have an ongoing argument about what they look like, but currently there's enough cool stuff in the game that I don't feel any need to rush to defining the Deva. They'll never be playable as characters, I don't believe.
There's an interesting point, which I think is probably going to touch on with a later question, which is, what is their design purpose in the game? Well, they're like huge swathes of the wiki. They're there so that if we ever want something and we want a cool idea for a piece of plot, we can go, we could have a Deva turn up. We could have a contingent of Deva from the Commonwealth, and this is going to create. Whereas if we build the world in a very flat way, where it isn't littered with mysteries everywhere and unexplained things and unknown things, then when you introduce a mystery or unexplained unknown element, everyone has to go, odd how no one ever mentioned that the Commonwealth had space aliens last week. We've been trading with these people for hundreds of years, but apparently there's like a whole other species of intelligent creature that lives there, and no one ever mentioned it. You get that kind of dissonance, and players put up with it in live world games because this shit happens all the time. But we wanted to try and do better than that with a closed world. So the world is awash with ideas and just throwaway lines mentioning things that are just there so the plot can go, I'm going to do something with that.
So we've had a bunch of questions about design. So now we're going to talk about a couple of questions. I haven't ordered these at all, so it's just pure coincidence. Brad Cohen asks, often people ask for advice on what they should do to create a new character, Clare, and what they can do at Anvil. And what would our advice be on creating a new group, and what sort of game can you aim a new group at? There's quite a few things to unpack there, but new characters, new groups, new group game.
Okay, so you go with a nice, small, compact question. I think with new groups, it's important to work out what the group wants to do. I think that's why we get quite a lot of new groups in Dawn, because Dawn has the range of being noble and being Baldric on the other end, and you can have a diversity inside the group. So I think it's important to work out what the group actually wants to play, so you don't have a bunch of people who aren't actually enjoying the concept in there. And then a group purpose and what you care about, whether you all have the same religious tendency, then that's what you want to aim for as a group, whether you're a group of ritualists. I think that's important. Matt will probably talk in a second that he thinks the way to do is to go for a small nation and a niche area where there aren't many other people.
No, I was gonna. You're not wrong. That of course I have opinions. But while you were talking about it, I just to sort of re-emphasize what you've said. Think of something you want to play, and then play that thing. A lot of time, I'll see a group of players get together and they go, "Oh yeah, we really want to play," and then someone will go, "Well, I want to be a marcher." And then what they'll try and do is shoehorn their friend who wants to be a marcher in, or they'll water down their concept of what they want to play to try and accommodate.
It's very important to you be into what you're doing. If you're into it, you'll enjoy it more.
And your marcher friend will have more fun if they go and play a marcher.
In the marches with some marcher people.
Yes.
Basically, don't water your concept down to get as much as possible. Do the opposite. Have a really, really emphatic concept that appeals to people a lot, and then play that thing to the hilt. The thing that people remember, the groups that stand out and really make an impact on Empire, are the ones where people come with a strong concept and then play it to the hilt. And they're the really big impact on the game. The bits where people just try and cobble something together so that everyone can be in, what it produces is just kind of bland water that doesn't really, it just washes back and forth over the game, doesn't have a play bleach, not water.
And I think having a unifying symbol or colour also helps people remember you as a group.
Yeah. And again, once you've set on it, go for it. you know, if you're find a way to make sure it's got, because the more people have got that symbolism, the stronger the visual identity is, and the bigger the impact.
But we're saying this, and of course, there is absolutely nothing wrong with turning up with your mates as a group to explore Anvil and see what you like, and then picking what you want to play afterwards. Not picking what you want to play, picking your niche.
Yeah.
Because as we constantly say, if it's not fun, don't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you pick something, you think, I really enjoy that. And those people over there seem to be having much more fun. Go down to God, explain it's your first game, get your skills changed, drop your concept, and go and do what they're doing. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very much. Particularly your first game. Come with a strong idea, but then be prepared to adapt and go in with go with the flowing game.
Harry Barone says, do you believe that there is any difference to how newer players approach the game compared to those who've played since the beginning?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, I do. And I think there's a different approach between how new players who've joined in the last 2 or 3 years play the game compared to newer players who joined in the first 5 or 6 years of Empire. And I can go into this at length if you wish.
Go on then. You've not said a lot so far.
So we used to know exactly what a new player to Empire was. They were an experienced LARPer who got talked into coming at the last mate with their mates and turned up in a group with them, which meant that they turned up with an idea about what live role playing was, how live role playing functioned, what they do in the field, and what the LARP Society expected of them to do in a field. Now our new players, generally speaking, haven't role played before. They book in advance, they make a plan, they tend to turn up on their own or in a group, in a couple, and not with an experienced group. And I love it because they turn up without preconceptions about what the game is and without preconceptions of any of the sort of rules that we have, like, oh, you should be around for a few years before you try and be emperor, or you know, and they come in and they just go for it, and I love it. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Basically, I think our new players are full of go, and it's great.
Yeah. The big thing you really identify is, particularly the ones coming in now, but actually always, anyone new to LARP, even if they come in quite tentatively, they still come in with a kind of boundless enthusiasm and that kind of open stare of amazement. They see Anvil, these people, and it tends to blow people's minds. With the best will in the world, old LARPers can be cynical and a bit jaded, and I've seen it all. And actually, LARP only works when you engage enthusiastically. If you're not positive about engaging with it, it won't work. So that, you know, new players always bring that absolute boundless kind of enthusiasm and kind of wide-eyed wonder that is just amazing, and it's a positive asset to have people with that attitude in the game, because it reminds us all kind of why we love the hobby. But yeah, I think as well, the people coming in recently who've come in from cosplay, and you see these coming in and starting out with these amazing costumes. That's something that's blown me away. You know, 20 years ago, best will in the world, new people coming into the hobby, it was considered pretty good if you had a piece of material you'd cut a hole in for your tabard. You know, now people just come to their first LARP game with costumes to die for, and you see them posting up on the Facebook groups going, yeah, I'm coming to my first event, this is my costume, is it good enough? And you're like, your costume is amazing. And I think, as Claire says, there's no sense to them of the limitations. They're not seeing this, you won't be kit together for your first event, so just borrow a bit off your friend, and you won't be able to have your own IC tent at your first event, and so just do this, and you won't be able to achieve anything in the game, so just sit quietly in your camp and do that. Instead, they're just coming in with the expectation that they're going to play this game, that the way they're seeing it in the photos and the way they're seeing other people
to the hilt. They're going to play it to the hilt, and they're doing it, and nobody should teach them any limitations.
Yeah.
Let's not go back to that.
I've often said experience is a straitjacket for the mind. You learn things, but you learn the failed. You learn the things you can't do. People who don't have experience are not crippled by past failures. And they have that absolute openness that, well, I'm going to try anything. Who knows what will work? And that's wonderful. It's wonderful for the game.
Moonchild Majora in the thread, in the chat, Steam chat, in the stream chat, I was wondering what it was called there, asks, after seeing some parallels, such as the Freeborn and the Khajiit, both valuing honesty, or Emperor Nicovar and Emperor Pelagius the Mad, I wanted to ask, are these coincidences, or do the game team really like the Elder Scrolls series? If so, what are some major influences from the series? I actually hadn't drawn the connection between the Freeborn and the Khajiit, or between Emperor Nicovar and Emperor Pelagius. So that is definitely a coincidence.
Who got them first?
Who got them first?
They were inspired by us.
They got them first. They definitely got them first. Looking back at our timing on it, because I was playing Daggerfall on, I suspect, an Amiga. Might even have been a Commodore 64. No, it can't be a Commodore 64. And Morrowind was around significantly before Empire, which came out around shortly after. Yes, came around shortly after the best of the Elder Scrolls games, which is Skyrim. I don't know, Graeme, did you play Elder
I've
Scrolls
never
games?
played any of the Elder Scrolls games.
Okay. Claire?
Not my thing.
No.
Okay.
I've never played one.
All right, so I should make this very quick then. Yes, we played the Elder Scrolls game. No, there's no specific parallels, but there are certain things that have come from similar sources, with one exception, which is that the Daedric princes were vaguely in my mind when I was doing the Eternals. That's it. Yeah, I thought that'd be a bit more of an interesting question. I thought you were bigger nerds. Joseph Baker asks, if budget wasn't a question, what single piece of kit would you most like to have in your arsenal?
I think I answered this when he asked it on the forums by saying it was a permanent site, which is a bit of the cheat. But, you know, if money was no object, that is the single piece of kit that would be most useful. It's an odd question, isn't it? Because it's a bit meaningless if money were no. What I would love to have is 1,200 suits of orc costume, all to the same standard as the Imperial Orc costume for the Yatoon, the Grendel, and the Druge. That'd be great. You know, if we could put every battle and put out every single orc to the same, to that level of rich character depth that you get with the Imperial Orcs, you know, the actual players, that would be fantastic. So that would be, if money were no object. I'd like to have 600 shields, so I could have 200 Yatoon shields, 100 Grendel shields, and 100 Druge shields. I'd like 100 Druge spears. Where do you stop? I could just carry on like this all day. The things that are really expensive are the things that to create a cast of thousands on the battlefield. Yeah, and unlike Lord of the Rings, we can't add in special effects computer graphics. So that's probably the place where I most feel it. Or
can we? No. I would like a wizard's tower. I would like a good way to do video onto a screen that doesn't look like video on a screen. I would like a giant stone elephant with a palanquin on the back of it in a format that we can take onto the main field with 50 crew and do a proper appearance by a Grendel Salt Lord. And I would like a couple of very nice big Eternal costumes, but I won't go into those in any detail. Graeme?
Plumbing.
Claire?
I'm going to sound really boring. I would like more indoor space on the main field with tables and chairs in it.
Good one. Yeah. Jason Panther asks, how do you get involved with the skirmish team / crew?
You email crew@profounddecisions.co.uk and you say, hi, I'm really keen to get more involved with crewing. I'd love to be a member of the skirmish team. And you'll get answered by our crew liaison, Bug, and she'll have a short chat with you and she'll ask you, you know, what sort of things you're looking to do. And then she'll put you in touch with Andy Connell, who runs the skirmish team. And if he's looking for more people, which he usually is, he'll have a chat to you and he may well offer a place on our crew team.
Coincidentally, Claire and I, the other morning, were recording a Claire and Andy in the morning with Tom Hancock, who talked a little bit about
jingle.
joining your skirmish team. You can do the jingle if you like, yes.
Clare and Andy in the morning.
With Tom.
With Tom.
Yeah. Anyway, so look for that in the next few days, and that has a little section at the bottom at the end about skirmish team. Okay, here we go. Tim Baker and Oz Mills have both basically asked the question: which other LARPs have inspired the design of Empire in a positive way? Whose games did you go to and think this is cool? We could do something like this. And are there any systems that we would like to borrow from other LARP games?
I think
Andy?
to an extent.
Oh, correct. You've started.
I think to an extent, Empire, particularly its rules, have been influenced by every single LARP game I've been to. There's little bits that you can find that relate to the Cuckoo's Nest rules back in Glasgow. There's stuff that has influenced from a whole range of games. Not always in a that's great, let's include it, but sometimes in a that doesn't work, let's not. To throw locational hits on the fire as a thing that we've sort of gone, maybe not. But there's other, I think, more specific examples. Impale. We did kind of rip Impale off from Odyssey, albeit we changed it a bit. But it's where that came from.
Demonstrated that it worked really nicely.
Yeah, it did.
For me, there's a lot of different influences, but one of the ones I think I like to mention, I mention it a lot, there was a game called Grand Design, which I crewed for, which ran about, I think, ran 3 events. Nothing from the rules particularly, but that setting concept of a closed world with a setting, rather than the games I was more familiar with at the time that were all very open and you could play whatever you like, coupled with the themes of players are in control of a great empire and are politicking with each other as much as you are with any PvE threat. Those were both big influences on the way I came into thinking about Empire.
Yeah, I'd agree with Andy. Certainly, design. We moved to Maelstrom. It was a key game in that development. It was a proof of concept that you could run a rich, detailed, closed world as a national event and just deliver it and just be like, this is the world. And everyone would just go, right, that's the game we're playing. I remember people's telling me, like, well, you've got to have goblins, you've got to have this. People want to play these things, so you've got to have them. Before
elves were a big one. Like, you've got to have elves.
You've got to have elves. And there was a kind of view of, well, people want to play it, so you've got to let them have it, which just always mystified me. But I think Grand Design provably put the nail in the coffin of that. Krieg's LARP was a game I found very inspirational. I am a bit, when we created Empire, I did various things. And one of the things I did was I went to a big European LARP, war LARP. And Krieg's LARP is literally war LARP. It's a weekend. It's a big Danish event of battles all weekend long. And I had amazing fun in those battles. They were just incredible. If you ever get an opportunity to go to Krieg's LARP, I'd highly recommend it. But it is literally a weekend of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, the LARP, including unit coherency. You have to fight. Everybody fights with the same weapon loadout and the same... everybody's dressed the same because it's Warhammer Fantasy Battle in the unit. And your unit has to keep unit coherency on the battle. And it sounds mad as a hatter, and it was amazing fun. Couldn't recommend it enough. In some elements of the very early design of Empire, attempt to reproduce that. They didn't really, and we slowly abandoned them over the years because they became vestigial. But it was inspirational to me to just see that big battle kind of thing. And I don't think we knew that's what we wanted, but it was really nice to be able to see it and feel it and experience it. Claire?
I think, obviously, I haven't been involved in running much LARP before Empire. I was briefly involved at the end of Maelstrom. What I've done a lot is my experiences as a player and tried to put in processes and assistance that would have helped me as a player when I started LARPing and going through.
Yeah.
And then obviously I stole a whole bunch of Empire stuff to run Fairyland.
Cool. Was that an award-winning game?
We've got two vaguely related questions from the stream, from Covey asking how long had Empire been an idea before E1 Year One, and Fallendraw asking, Empire's evolved and grown since its inception. How long did it take for the game to evolve into the spectacle you imagined it being at the start? Did it take 5 years to grow into what you wanted it to, or was it what you wanted at E1 at Year One Event One? I don't entirely remember a Year One Event One because it was so cold.
The bitter horror, the horror.
It was
So-
a bit
Go on.
chilly.
I was going to say we were working on it for a couple of years before Event One. We'd been talking about it for about 3 or 4 years before that, at least, maybe longer. Was it 3 years we were working on it?
I think we worked out that we started work on Empire after the first Odyssey event.
We did, yes, because I have you're right. I have a distinct memory of coming to you and saying basically, this game is good. Let's kill Maelstrom and run something good.
Let's run something better.
Better. And that's when we started on. But we've been talking about a lot of the ideas that were going to become Empire for years before that. We used to talk about them a lot on car drives from Preston to whatever site Maelstrom was running on. As to when it got to the spectacle I imagined, I think it was the first battle I saw. So that would have been about Year One, sometime. It certainly wasn't 5 years before it had evolved into the game I was hoping it would be.
No, not.
Yeah.
I would say by start of Year Two, it was very much the game I hoped. And only because the first year, like, you've built something and then it's not the players, it's us. We couldn't fulfill the vision we were trying to deliver at Year One. So you're just running around, like, putting out fires left, right and centre.
I can't remember what it was, but I have a distinct memory that at some point at the first half of Year Two, there was some PvP action that took place. Some sort of somebody putting their own nation ahead of all the other nations. And that was the point, I think, at which it really gelled. It had stopped. Everybody had stopped being us against the bad guys, and somebody had stood up and gone, on second thoughts, you could be against the bad guys and we could have Mithril or something like that. I genuinely can't remember what it was, but I remember. Yeah,
I can think of a few things that were like that. Yeah, not all of which I can
So at
say
the point
on
where the
stream.
players stopped all being on the same side is when it came into its own. Claire?
So, Dadford is the place where I think Anvil has become alive for me. It's the
Right.
place where the layout has felt like a town, and I think it's the main drag with the streets coming off there. I feel like we've built a town there, not just all of us in tents in a field.
Just
I don't know whether that's the sort of shape of the field, because I can stand almost anywhere on that field and see a town laid out in front of me.
Yeah.
And a lot of other sites have been flat, and I haven't had that view. But that's the place where I feel we've built a town.
I often say we took 6 years to design, 6 months rather, to design Maelstrom, a year and a half to design Odyssey, and 3 years to design. That's my kind of mental map of how long those games took to create. But Empire was, I think it's the most heavily designed game we've ever created. We spent hours thinking about conceptual, what do people enjoy in LARP? How do you deliver that? What is it that people really want? What is it we want to deliver? There were, with the best will in the world, when I think to, when I create was sort of the driving force behind creation of Maelstrom, it was like, cool, we'll have crystal people. They'll be cool. And dryads, they'll be cool. I'll stick dragons in because they'll be cool. And it was just a mad throw crazy shit at the wall and see what sticks approach to design. And we've got better at designing and creating and thinking about it and thinking about what will actually be fun in play.
What was your favorite? I'm just trying to find something cool to follow that on with, but instead I'm just going to pick the next question. Captain Framos says, when will the giant mechanical Drake/Dragon in a tent return? Also the massive fort.
So the giant mechanical Drake head in a tent was built for us by Bill Thomas. Bill is, he is just a giant in the hobby. He is probably, to be fair, the most talented guy that exists in British LARP. He is just a genius. You know, and couple the creative genius with Kira, it's like, oh, 2 for the price of 1, 2 geniuses for the price. Together, they're just unbelievable. 2 incredibly talented people. And Bill's view is that you should build these things and use them once, because, you know, if you wanted something cool, yeah, just build another cool thing. Us mere mortals don't often have that luxury. But we try, when we create these things, to not overuse them. We try and we don't want to overexpose them. But the giant drake head, it was a bitch to store. It was an epic bitch to store. So we stored it for a while, and then we put it in a skip, because we thought, actually, if we want to do something cool like that again, we'll go and speak to Bill and go, hey, Bill, got any cool ideas for something amazing? And hopefully Bill will not be filming the next Star Wars or film he's involved in, or directing his own stuff, and be like, yeah, I've got a week, I'll build you some mad shit. So that's why that has not come out again, and it went in a skip. We will do something different next time. When? I don't know at the moment. I don't know at the moment when it will happen. We are things are very difficult at the moment, so I don't even know when the next event will be, let alone when the next mad, crazy battlefield thing will come out. We did put 3 land sharks on a Grendel battle fairly recently. That was pretty high impact, and I'm pretty pleased about that. Clare, you've disappeared, so it will happen. It will happen. But if we were running events regularly at the moment, we would kind of be saving up for a permanent site, and that has crimped our budgets a little bit for doing crazy mad shit. So there is a reason less crazy mad shit, and it isn't simply that Bill Thomas has got more directing work.
I don't want to do that one until Claire gets back. Don't want to do that one until Claire gets back.
You'll never get back.
Hello.
To She's
Hello.
back.
And that was when my Wi-Fi fell over.
Back. Okay.
You are a static picture, but yes. Hey, there we go.
Am I?
No.
So when the man knocked on the door yesterday and said, "We hear there's been trouble with the Wi-Fi in your area," what I should have said was yes, not no, everything's fine.
Yeah.
What did I miss?
Nothing. Matt was talking about Bill Thomas.
Okay.
And about why we haven't had any giant snake puppets for a while.
Because when he was talking about that, because what you were saying was the sort of limited display is what makes things cool. And that's kind of past life visions as well.
Yeah. And all of the encounter sense.
Once it's cool, 40 times is not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to pick that point, it's why we don't give rhinos to the players. War rhinos. Because encountering a war rhino on a battlefield is epic and amazing. Lugging one out onto the battlefield to fight against the monsters with for the 16th time is just like, oh God, who's going to...
Not the rhino.
Not the rhino again. It's not epic. Not cool. The rule of cool applies. Go. What's our next question?
What is each crew on the AMA's favourite realm and eternal, and why? Another one from Pel Piercy.
You can go off, people.
I genuinely don't have a favourite one. I have some I like more than others, but it's about a 50-50 split, so I'm going to skip this one. One of you 3 can answer it.
I'm going to show my startling ignorance here. I really like Tharum, the Bound King. I like the ability to appear on thrones. I just think that's a really nice little flavour. And obviously I like Wendigo because I'm a monster.
Everybody likes Wendigo.
Ephesus.
You've got to give a reason. It's in the question.
Ephesus effectively doesn't care. There's no moral judgments with any of Ephesus's trades or anything like that. They just happen. It's cold. It's unfeeling. It's logical. It's what I'm here for.
I'm going to pick two, just because I can. I can pick as many as I like. I love Wiser Angara, just because it's let us do some amazing stuff with kids. I love an Eternal that's got that focus. I think Wiser Angara really brings alive some of that kind of rich vein of folk stories and the way children are portrayed in folk stories that isn't the modern kind of saccharine Disney version, but is a more traditional, not horror, but is something like Grimm's fairy stories. There's a darker and I think Wiser Angara really captures that and allows for that, and I think it's really interesting. I've written a couple of bits of stuff with Wiser Angara that I've just had a blast, and I think it's a tremendous Eternal, a really nice piece of writing. And I love Irahira because I love Down, and I'm surprised that one slipped past me, and just delighted that it did, because it's it's just wonderful, and it makes me smile every time in a game in which at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff we put in there is nasty and unpleasant, and is there to sort of piss on the player's chips or be a problem or be an antagonist or be difficult or cumbersome or obnoxious or ornery. To have this Eternal that kind of from Watership Down, and yet at the same time it's a pain in the arse for the players, I think is really nice. So I think for me it's Wiser Angara and Irahira.
Oh, there we go. Lucas Palmer says, what has been the thing excuse me, what has been the thing you've seen from the players that was a holy crap, that was unexpected and amazing moment?
Wasn't their question, what thing would you like to see that would be a holy? But this is a much better.
No, that is the question.
Cool. Definitely for me, the most recent one would be Scarlet's statues that they've made. They've made these two statues that they're going to use for set dressing in the High Guard camp, and that was very genuinely a holy crap, that is amazing moment. That just blew me away, and every time I think about it, it's not just that it's a lot of work and a lot of creativity and poured their energy and their passion into it. With the best will in the world, they're an enormously talented person, and the stuff they've created really typifies. They've captured that aesthetic that you'd want to see in High Guard, and there's no doubt in my mind that if gone to Scarlet with a different brief and said create a statue for Urizen or create a statue for Wintermark, they'd have thought about it differently and produced something differently. They produced two emphatically kind of highborn statues that just really look amazing, and that was definitely a holy crap moment. But it's that kind of thing all the time. You see bits of costume or weapons or props or camp set dressing or anything, just drops my jaw with amazement. We talked earlier, weren't we, about Dave Barnett's I'm strolling, it's just an event, and I'm past this guy's tent and he's putting together this thing, and I'm trying to put an event on, and I'm just stood there for 10-15 minutes just watching him erect the front of his camp, of his tent, and it's this beautiful wooden doorway designed and built to look like the doorway into a caravan. And I just had to stand and watch this amazing thing come together for sort of 10 minutes, just in amazement, and just like, that is so cool, just so cool. So yeah, that really blew me away.
I think I mentioned this last time we did one. The coronation, which was broadly, which was largely arranged by the players, was just an awesome moment of LARP. was one of the things I actually got to see as well, which makes it stand out. But yes, everything those players achieved was just great, from the singing to the crowds to everything. All we did was give them some scaffolding, and they produced a beautiful piece of LARP drama.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the Orc Camp,
Yeah.
because there's so much work into it. It's so well set up, and it doesn't look like any of the human camp.
You get a sense with the Orc Camp of what we might be able to at site, and it is mind blowing. You just think, what if we could get to that, way beyond even that standard everywhere, and it would just be jaw dropping, just amazing.
Graeme, you got out?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm the worst at this stuff.
I know. It's why you should be comparing instead of me.
Yeah.
Now, the next question, which I'm taking from the chat, because this actually makes a nice segue. Has there been something the players have done that you never expected from Covey? Scarsind, Peace with the Grendel.
Claire?
I like the way Andy covered two really big topics in that words. I was kind of expecting a few minutes to think. Scarsind, yes, is huge, and is still rolling on quietly, which I like. It's not going to go away. How do you tell somebody was from Scarsind? Is still regularly said in Wintermark. I was amazed at how easy Elisabetta had it as well. I thought somebody would.
You've got a fascinating definition of easy.
I was fascinated by it. I thought people were going to. I thought somebody would have a serious attempt to kill her. I thought it would be made much more difficult for her.
I thought the only thing I thought that she got away with that I did not think that anyone would get away with, but she just made it absolutely commonplace, was the use of Hand of the Chancellor. I always thought that with Hand of the Chancellor, I thought you'd be crazy to use Hand of the Chancellor. It would just look like you're embezzling funds. But she just made it absolutely standard. Now it's just sort of like, well, of course I'm using Hand of the Chancellor. Did it every season.
I think, I wasn't surprised in the least. We designed a game that was meant to be political, and which you were supposed to oppose people politically, and so all the opposition to the Empress was political. It wasn't like, let's roll her camp and murder her. It was political, and it was pretty ferocious stuff. And it was exactly what the game was designed. So
Wait, we lost the chat, or have I disconnected or something?
That didn't surprise me in the least. Well, I'm still connected. I can still see everybody.
I can still see the chat.
We can still see you, Andy.
Nosrenda, I can see you writing the word test. Andy, we've lost Andy. That's what we've lost. Well, the chat stuff's going to look a little weird, like Matt's been bisected, and that my name has become Clare.
Oh no!
At least it wasn't me this time.
We are restored.
Hang on. And there we are. And we're back.
And we're back. So I wasn't surprised by that in the slightest. The thing I was surprised by was Teresa and the cake. That just utterly flabbergasted me. I did not envisage that someone would go to all that effort to create an amazing cake and then would be absolutely cool with somebody coming in and smashing it up with a giant two-handed sword. And I don't know who that cake baker was, but I take my hat off to you, whoever you were. You are what live role play is all about. And we bake cakes so that people like Teresa can smash them with two-handed swords, so that they can be amazing moments of live drama. But I guess that surprised me, because with the best one in the world, when you've poured all that effort into a cake, there's kind of the assumption that actually you're going to want people to get cake enjoyment from your cake. And whoever, as I understand it, they were Teresa to make a moment of great political drama. out of their cake, and awesome.
There is a gorgeous photo set of the cake meeting its demise at the hands of a two-handed sword. It's like I don't know how many. It feels like 10 photos in slow motion. This two-handed sword being brought up and down, smashing into this wedding cake. It is a beautiful piece of work.
I have no idea why that, nor do I ever need to know. I'm just surprised and over the moon that it happened. I'm very pleased that I can write smash wedding cakes with two-handed swords. That makes me happy.
And as a bookend, then the third question from Richard Fannin is: what hasn't happened that you expected to happen?
Not really. I mean, I don't know about you, Andy, but I think we talk about this a lot. We don't really go into these games with expectations about what's going to happen. We don't sit there and meticulously go, well, what if this happens and what if this happens? We don't write any of the stuff we create for kind of, well, the players will do this and then we'll do that and this. That's not how we create reactive plots on a scale of 2,000 plus players. So, and the way we do it is to have zero expectations of any kind. I always say, I don't care what the players do. As long as you do something, anything is the right answer. It's a bit like when you're at school and the teacher goes, anything is the right answer. And it's true in Empire. It's like, just do something. I don't care what. Be proactive and engaged and dramatic and enjoy the moment. What you do, that's like, if you're I guess my job is we're the stage-hands. We're the people doing the lighting and manning the ticket office and showing the audience to their seats. And then it's like saying to the person showing the people to their seats, what do you think of, have you got some opinions on how the actors should portray this role? And it's like, no, that's for the actors to decide. It's for us to show you to your seats. We are just going to lower the lights and turn the spots on. What you do when the spotlight is on you is kind of up to you. So I don't even think in terms of being surprised at, they're not in terms of, expectations and then, this didn't happen. Graeme, you're a more expectation.
Yeah, most of my expectations are either come true or are much more minor. It's like I expect certain nations to be much stronger in the Bourse than they are because they've got much more advantages and they're not, but that's not interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've got any grand expectations that I expected and that haven't come to pass.
Claire?
No, not me. I think it's because we have such a large thing with so much scope that it was very hard to just expect things to go one way.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a very disappointing answer, isn't it?
So, following on vaguely from this, somebody... Oh, dear, I've deleted their question. There we go. Tim Edwards asked, what makes a good plot for Empire? We probably want to be quick on this one, as it's basically going to be me and Matt. What makes a good plot for Empire? Actually, no, Claire, you start. What makes a good plot for Empire?
Something that gets people involved, something that encourages people to say yes, something that draws disparate groups from across the game into a common cause. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Something that catches people who wouldn't usually be involved.
Yeah, I think those are good answers. They're very meta answers. You're talking about the kind of the metadata of what defines a good plot. I think every plot writer has their own unique style and their own unique approach to writing plot. So what makes a good Matt plot is different to what makes a good Raff plot, or what makes a good Felix plot, or what makes a good Renner plot, or a good Cat plot. Different people write different plots in different ways. And I can look at a piece of plot by Cat and just be in awe of the rich characterization and the very personal touch and the way they can produce a plot that's really about individual people and a kind of personal motivations, and there's a rich level of interaction and a kind of rich amount of background in it. And I can't create a plot like that ever. It's just not my style. I write in a very big, dramatic, kind of showy, this has happened in the do, and there's no depth to it. It's just a thing. It's just a giant boulder, right, rolling down a hill. But my plot would be, it's a giant boulder rolling down a hill, going to crush a small town. And do you divert it towards the orphanage or towards the factory? Which one do you want to save? That would be my plot. So I might have different kind of ideas. What do I think makes a good plot? All of the kind of meta script, data that Claire's described about getting people involved who don't normally get involved and so forth. I think a good plot is one the NPCs really enjoy being in. I think a good plot is one the writer feels proud of having written. I think a good plot is one that obviously engages players. And for Empire, fundamentally, a good plot is one that puts the players right at the heart of it and is about the players. That's always the thing I look for. Is this plot about the players, or is it about some other group of protagonists? You know, a good plot in Empire is about the players.
Graeme?
A good plot in Empire is one that does not break the rules or require me to make up any additional rules.
Uses the correct numbers?
Yes, obviously. Everything uses the correct numbers. I did better use the correct numbers.
I have 3 things I look for when I'm evaluating a plot. Bullet points, short, punchy sentences, and that it exposes the evil that lurks within the hearts of humankind.
Much like bullet points.
Bullet points are great. Okay, jump into a random one because I'm saving one of the ones I want to answer for later. Lucas Palmer asks, what are the ramifications of a nation being taken over by barbarians and what that means for the players?
Oh. Well, what are the ramifications? There's a bunch of mathematical. You'd have no senators. You'd have no territories that could support an army. So you'd have any armies you had would be decaying from the outset. You'd have no national bourse resources because all of those would be conquered, and any of the resources owned by the characters would be in captured territory. So they would be producing diminished resources. So that is a set of mechanical consequences. And one of the things I think is positive about Empire is you can just go through the list. You can just go, okay, the worst has happened. What now follows? And actually what's clear is that the game is still playable. You know, if every march of territory is successfully conquered by the Yatoon, the game doesn't end. We don't be like, oh, yeah, that's it. Game over. Here are a horrible set of mathematical consequences that will just happen. They're just baked in. You will suffer all of this terrible losses, and then we'll keep playing, and you'll keep playing from that position, and it'll be on you to get it back. There won't be like, plunge that, because we can't possibly play with that happen.
There'll be no gimme. There'll be no. Here's Mornwald 2. It's actually a secret territory that lives in the middle of the woods of Miaran.
Yeah, no, there won't be any. Yeah, so
to be fair, though, you say that, but I think there is a reasonable chance that you would be getting a little bit more of our time. We're unlikely to turn up and say, yeah, we're just going to ignore the fact that the entire Marches is now living in Tasato.
We write a lot of plot about what we feel are the dramatic consequences of what's happening. So if 500,000 Marchers are forced to flee from Mornwald, Upwald, Breggers Land, and the Wald I've forgotten, Mitwald?
Yeah.
And are forced to flee, that will create dramatic consequences for the nations around them. It will, there will be winds of fortune with terrible decisions for the players to make. Do we support these people or just let them starve? If we disband one of our armies, then we'll be able to feed. With the bonus food, we'll be able to feed all these tens of thousands of refugees that are living out slums outside Tasato. And I look forward to the Senate having to debate that 200,000 Marcher refugees in slums outside Tasato starve, or whether we disband, say, 1 or 2 armies so we've got enough food to feed them. That will be a punchy debate, I would imagine. Whatever. The game would just happen. It would be awesome if you were in that nation. Just awesome, because you will be getting plot thrown at you left, right, and centre. We will be running plot after plot after plot, because we run plot where all the abrasive surfaces of the game are. If you're getting invaded, that is grit in the player. It's a source of rich conflict in the game. So you can bet that we're going to run a lot of plot around it.
So we had 2 more questions from the stream. If every territory falls, do we all stand in the resistance? And a follow-up: what if Cassinia falls? I don't think we need to go into those in great detail. It'll be epic, if nothing else. But I do remember that the game that turned into Empire was originally called Resistance! Exclamation mark.
Yeah, we could definitely run a game that is Resistance running in a conquered land, which is overrun by, one assumes, Druge, because they make much better villains.
The Jotun would be much more annoying, as would the Grendel. All 4 of our barbarian nations would be excellent choices for the jackboot of oppression that the players can rail against.
I would make a strong argument, if we're running that game, that actually straight away you want 3 or 4 different oppressors, because then you get rich veins of plot around what's it called? Collaboration. It's like, well, yeah, but the Yatun aren't as bad as the Druge, so we should support the Yatun in their war against the Druge. That could give us a better opportunity to throw off the yoke or whatever.
They would give limited rights.
Yeah, you never want monolithic evil. You just, the only reason the Druge work in the game is because that there are other orcs as well. You would never. My hunch is that if we only had one orc nation, it would either be the Thule or the Grendel, and probably the Thule, actually. I don't think the other 3 would make sense by themselves. The Druge would be awful as just a purely monolithic evil. The Grendel would be awful because they're just dicks. And if everybody you fought was just a dick, that would be like, the organisers of this game are just dicks.
I disagree slightly. I think the Grendel are in a good position to be set up to immediately fragment into competing Grendel factions that you can play against each other.
Okay, but what you're saying there is, if we only actually take steps to not only have the Grendel.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely. That is fair, I think.
The Thule, I think, if you had to pick one, you'd pick the Thule. But the point is, so yeah. And we talked about games that inspired. Joe Rooney and I think Nathaniel Roulard, I think, ran Insurrection together. And that had whole themes of oppression and fighting against oppression, and was really, that had some really interesting ideas. And that isn't what inspired Empire, but there was definitely a kind of, we could totally run. If that's how it goes, we'll find a way to adapt the game and run with it.
Gosh, but we would struggle to oppress our player base looking at the resources we have available to us. We would need an awful lot of NPCs with broom shanks across their shoulders and additional orc costumes hung off them in an attempt to look like an oppressive occupying force. But I assume the skirmish team would have a whale of a time. What pieces of fiction were an inspiration / influence during the creation of Empire's world, asks Jarab Schlabra. We've talked about these a bit before. There are 3, for me, key pieces of fiction that influenced the Empire world. One is the first lore book specifically, but Joe Abercrombie's whole body of work is just great low fantasy political games that games. It's games, and I find it more accessible than Game of Thrones and less annoying. The Mystara setting from 80s TSR Dungeons and Dragons was a big influence on me, and Pratchett just generally. Matt?
I'm a big fan of Henson's work, Fraggle Rock. That was a big inspiration for me, particularly in terms of what not to do in a game. If Henson was in favour of it, lovable hippie that he was. For those who don't know, Fraggle Rock was his plan to bring about world peace. It's good to be ambitious with your TV programming choices, small kids. So I look at a lot of Henson's work, and there's ideas in there, and I think, that's what we don't want to have in our game. I loved the first law. I love Abercrombie. I think he's a brilliant writer. I like the Glocktra, the torturer, a person who does terrible things to achieve bearable outcomes. And that, I think, is probably a parable, is a metaphor for Empire. Occasionally you do bad things to achieve bearable outcomes. What other works of fiction? I don't read as much as I used to. Yeah.
You quote The Tick a lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure that was a big inspiration. I mean, I love the... Not in the face.
Was it Screw You, Pogo Man, you useless asshole?
You're a useless asshole, Pogo Man.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's not from The Tick. That's from How to Be a Superhero.
Ah, right. My apologies.
And yeah, there's that. Okay, that's a really inspirational clip. That for those who are not familiar with it, Pogo Man has been listening to the local gang who are going to rob a bank, but he's bouncing up and down outside their window on a pogo, you see, and he only hears half of what they say. So he goes to the mayor and goes, "Yeah, the Brinks gang are planning to rob the bank, but I haven't got a clue where or when." And the mayor says, "You're a useless asshole, Pogo Man." And we can laugh at that; it's funny, but actually, what it says is something really interesting. It says you're not going to get the narrative outcome. The narrative outcome is that the superhero goes and listens to the villains and outwits them and comes back with the information and gets the perfect narrative answer to move the story forward. And even if it isn't the right answer within the context of what the superhero wants, it will be the perfect answer in terms of what the narrative wants. Superhero stories follow a narrative causality in which events move from one narrative point to the next with perfect synchronicity. And what happens to Pogo Man is he comes back and goes, "They're going to rob the bank. I haven't a clue which one or when," which is utterly useless. There's no narrative flow from that. He has fucked up, and by his own actions, he's achieved diddly squat. He has basically gone in there underprepared and come out with nothing. And it doesn't. What he doesn't get is what he gets is, "You're a useless asshole, Pogo Man." And I think that's a metaphor for Empire. We don't give you narrative results. If you go with your
give you a pogo stick,
and so what you need is a sidekick with Pogo who can be up when you're down. You see, that's how they solve that problem. But more meaningfully, we will not move you deftly from one narrative outcome to the next. We are not telling a rich, beautiful story where you're going to progress from one point to the next. We're giving you a load of shit to deal with, and if you don't deal with some of it, it'll just get worse. It'll just continue to rot like a bad smell in the room.
Hey, did you have any fiction you wanted to mention? Preferably not with a lesson that we can all learn in a moral Sesame Street kind of way.
So I wasn't allowed to watch Ragnarok. This is true because the Gorgs gave me nightmares. that is honestly true. The Gorgs gave me nightmares and I couldn't watch it. I don't know what that says about me. I read an awful lot of Finnish and Inuit folklore before we ran the event because my involvement in the event was pretty much only the Suak.
Graeme?
Yeah.
I read a lot of rule books. I mean, it is what it is. Like, I have a niche, and my niche isn't to craft loving and interesting worlds. My niche is to look at rules.
We did read a lot of rule books. Yeah. Right.
We've been going on for a little while now, so I'm going to start moving us towards winding up. It means we haven't been able to get to all the questions, but we've done as many as we can, and I've got a few more still to go. So let's go with some of the positive ones. Let's look at some of the upbeat ones. Jared Schlabber again asks, "What about Empire gives you the greatest sense of pride?"
The scale.
Claire, you're good at this feely stuff.
Okay, so obviously I'm very, very proud of the work we've done with new player support at games. I don't think anybody puts on a raft of sport activities like we do, and I'm very proud that we do that. I'm really proud at how our player base supports new players as well. things like the phrase "I'm new to Anvil," and the response that gets from the player base. I am really proud of that. I'm also really proud of the work we do with conduct, because it's so important that we create safe, welcoming spaces. And I like that we do it. I like that we look at it and revise it. And yeah, basically, I'm really proud to be involved with those parts. There you go. That was predictable.
That's good. I'm proud of the cosplayers. I'm proud of the fact that our hobby, Empire, has really drawn people in from other hobbies, from other avenues. You just didn't seem to see people coming in from cosplay and other backgrounds 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And I think part of that is about cultural changes, but part of it is because the players have made the game look so good that people from other hobbies, LARPers have always kind of accepted the limitations of our. I think it looks amazing visually and seems such a rich, believable world. People from other hobbies like cosplay and lots of others look at it and go, "Wow, that looks amazing." So I'm proud of the fact that our hobby looks amazing to people who aren't LARPers and looks appealing to people who aren't LARPers. So I think it's really good for the hobby if we are opening up and bringing new people in. It's brilliant.
I've said earlier, the scale is the thing that gets me all the time. Like, just to look back at it and look back at earlier games and earlier ran things. Like I couldn't have imagined this 10 years ago. And it's about like 10, 11, 12 years ago that Maelstrom ran its largest event, which is still half the size of one of the events we run now.
Not even that.
Celestial Gal was 1100?
1006.
1006 plus crew. But yeah.
What about you, Andy?
It is invariably whenever I see the stuff that people make about the world, the songs, the poems, the artwork, the in-character stuff that they design, the ways that they take the setting that we've created and make it more real for everybody. That sort of stuff just makes me happy every time I see it. It's fundamentally one of the reasons that about once every couple of events or so, I put a stupid little fez and a tiny waistcoat on and go out and clap my cymbals saying excellent at people who sing songs with me. Because I just like an opportunity to get exposed. The food is irrelevant, but people coming and singing songs and talking to me about the game like it's real is what I do the game for, basically. That's it. Players making cool stuff. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Asked Stephen Kirkbride.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Running Empire. What I thought was a bit of a straightforward question.
Yeah, I think in that sense it is a good question. A really dull answer. Where do I see myself in 5 years' time running Empire? There's no. I think from, like you say, Andy, from about year 5 onwards in Maelstrom, we had a sense of, there's another game that we could or should be running, and we didn't know what it was then. We didn't have a clue what it was then, but we knew there was another game that we should be running. And a year or two after that, it started to take shape, and then. By the end, it became Empire, and we delivered that. 7 years into Empire, I think. Count it, and where do I see myself in 5 years' time? Working to make the game better, improving it. There's a kind of hope that I'm going to get to a point and go, oh, there's nothing to improve. This is just as good as it gets, and we can just sort of sit back and enjoy it. But I doubt my perfectionist drive will ever let me do that. But yeah, 5 years from now, running Empire, hopefully from a permanent site.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Was I really want us to be doing it from a permanent site by then? That's just it's the next big improvement.
It's the next paradigm shift.
Yeah.
That is the thing that will change Empire and take it to the next. Yeah,
Claire?
Andy, Claire.
Oh, I don't mind. Claire.
Oh, I'm going to be organised in 5 years' time.
Is that your code for saying that you're
I'm going to be organised. I'm going to stop saying things after event 4, like over the winter I'm going to do this, and actually do it.
You're going to have a big map of the site with blinking lights on it and half a dozen minions in boiler suits.
Yeah, we'll just dispatch them. It'll be great.
Yeah. And I guess then I'm going to do 2 quick fun questions to finish up with. This is one that Matt and I answered during the hedge stuff video that we did last week. So Clare and Graeme, Sophie Williams asks, you're playing a brand new starting character at Anvil. Who are you and what nation and what do you do first to get stuck into the game on Friday night?
So I do technically have a character who is a Suak mage.
Yeah, but in this scenario, you are
Which
brand new starting player.
So if I'm not going to do that, I am probably going to go into Navarre, and I'm probably going to go big magic. I haven't decided what sphere of magic yet, but I want to be part of a ritual team, and I want to do the big rituals, and I want people to be upset with me. Sorry, I mean proud and supportive of me.
I, by contrast, am nature's bookkeeper. I will be someone somewhere. I will be their flunky. I will be their numbers person to facilitate them and make everything work and grease it along in the background. There's archetypes for that in most nations. Seneschal is the one that probably most springs to mind in Dawn. To just work in the background and do those horrible, tedious number jobs that the person that is the face, the big sort of the larger than life personality. They need a horrifying vizier style numbers person to sit behind them, and I am that person. So I would.
So presumably.
I would attach myself like some kind of lamprey to one of these large personalities.
So your plan is to sit behind. So your plan for the Friday night is to sit behind them and make their numbers add up.
Correct.
And I'm going to do one last one, which I've recently come up with and I quite like. What's the best thing you've eaten on the field?
Japanese cold noodles from the noodle stall. They are amazing.
Graeme?
Sausages. Unfortunately, none of the sausages that any of the current caterers do. There's one of the old caterers, I can't even remember which one, that used to do these thin but still horrifyingly greasy and grotty sausages, and they were great. I could just eat 12 of those, and that would just do me. Oh, I love those sausages.
It would do you.
Matt.
Oh man, I am the very opposite of an epicure. If I could just take a pill 3 times a day and do away with all the eating bits, I'd be like there in a second. I can't remember eating anything. In fact, I don't remember eating at an event in the last 10 years. There must have been food on occasions, but I don't.
Matt likes the wraps, I think. I'm trying to remember what else you'd like.
I remember the coolest meal I had was in Wintermark when I was playing the Jarl of Kierheim. There was some cool role play going on in the Wintermark tent. I don't remember the food, obviously, because I'm not interested in the food, but it was there was some really nice role play moments. So that's why I remember. Yeah, I'm always going to go back to role play.
A couple of years ago, I was walking down the main drag, and one of my friends who was at her first Empire event was walking up it with some sort of, massive falafel wrap or something. And she just looked at me and went, "Claire, I need to tell 1995 Ali that she never needs to eat another pig in a bun."
So I think that is we've done like an hour and 40 minutes. I think that's enough. I'm sorry to anybody whose questions we didn't get to. We've still got them on the game team questions list. We might get to them at some later point.
What was Tim Baker's? We were going to finish with one of Tim Baker's.
Oh, Tim Baker's. Okay,
that's why I wanted to wrap. I can't remember.
Oh, right. Okay. No, it was. What do you think was your single best decision about the game since it started?
Yeah. I know what for me it was. It was the inclusion of children. And that was a huge. It really wasn't. I'd always had difficulties around our age discrimination policy, which we said you come to the events if you're not 16, because it's discriminatory. And it produces all kinds of weirdness, as any discriminatory policy does, where you go, oh, well, you're 15 and 11 months, but you're 16 years and 1 week, so you can come. And that always irked. But I'd never foreseen us doing anything. And then as we were designing it, the structure was coming together, the idea that this was a society that had rules and laws, and suddenly it was like, it made sense that it made sense that there would be things for children to do, and it made sense. If you're living in a post-apocalyptic wilderness and you're going 4 times a year to the most dangerous place in the whole world, where you will be attacked night and day by screaming monsters, and then I've dragged my child along with me. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But I really, as we developed Empire, suddenly it just became obvious to me that children would have a place in this setting. And, inspired by something Heather McDonald said to me way back, which is that children should play children in a live role. They shouldn't, because we should portray what we are. And it made sense that there would be children in the roles. And then as we started to think about it, and 2 or 3 people were kind of like, oh, PD never had kids at their games. This is a terrible decision. And they so I think that's the best decision we made with Empire.
I think.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think winding back Arcane Projections to where they live now.
So you think not giving yourself a nervous breakdown?
Basically, yeah. No, Arcane Projections were very close to breaking me. Like, I was very close to just walking away from the game completely. Like, it was about to do me in. At one point, I did nothing but Arcane Projections for a whole event. That was it. I would finish one set of Arcane Projections just in time for the next set of Arcane Projections to now become due. And I would just do that, and that, and that, and that would keep me up until 3 a.m. I would go to bed, get up at 7, and start what I needed to do to start the rest of the Arcane Projections. And that was about 2 or 3 events in a row.
That sounds soul destroying.
It was. Whereas where they are now, I know there's a lot of people are unhappy with where they are now, that they liked that they used to be able to get them back in real time and be able to get them back in a reasonable, like they could do something on the Friday night and they would be able to be casting a ritual by Saturday afternoon. But that killed me. That very nearly did me in.
It's important in LARP to think clearly about what players want and what they can have and what will produce a sustainable, good quality game over the long term. And any individual player would love to have the ability to do magic on the fly and just have the head ref turn and go, this works like this.
It was astonishingly poor in terms of work put into positive outcome in game. Because the other thing that was also pretty demoralizing was the knowledge that 90% of them didn't get cast. So I was putting in 8 hours of work per session for several sessions over a weekend, only to discover that only 30 minutes of that work was actually ever made it into play. The rest of it, people took one look at it and went, nah, too expensive, and threw it away.
Claire?
So 3 things. I think the ability and willingness to change and adapt with things like Arcane Projections, rather than just persevere with things that is a problem, is a really good trait we have. Putting you 3 in a box, not a tent that leaks. Genius. I know. I'm not sure if you would agree, but I think that has actually made a big difference.
I think I only spent...
Graeme has become a lot calmer since he doesn't have to wear socks and shoes when he's working.
Oh yeah, it's great. But I think I only spent 1 event in a tent, and that was the first event at Dadford.
Yeah, then you had the box that didn't have a door on the end.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Yeah,
the asbestos was healthy for you. It's fine.
So I think that's been a really good move. The box. It also means you're contained, so we know what to do. And on a personal level, actually realizing that we could have more than one egg grow in a nation.
Yeah. Yes, and that would be clear advantages, and that was a sensible thing to do, and
Yeah.
it's a good decision.
Mine is actually a nod to a question we got in the stream from Swish Bob. What decision were you most unsure about at the time that you're happiest with now? Touch-based magic. I really like the fact that that when we started thinking about it, that very few iconic wizards who aren't inspired by Dungeons and Dragons throw fireballs and lightning bolts around, and so we looked at touch-based magic, and we decided to make all our combat magic touch-based, and I think that has been a great decision that I'm really pleased with us going with. It also helped to address a couple of problems live role-playing games can often have, in which wizards are the most powerful people in the arena, where you would expect the people in armor with swords to be most powerful and effective. So I really like the fact we did touch-based magic.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Cool.
Excellent.
So, do you want to sign us off, Matt?
No. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed that. I've certainly enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this opportunity to get questions, and it's just been a lot of fun. So I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and I hope we'll get a chance to do another one of these in the future under more favourable circumstances, perhaps. But I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been good fun.
Before we
At some point over, so go on.
Go on. No, go on.
Well, I'm gonna sign off the tedious stuff that Claire makes me do after every video. So if you've got something worthwhile to say, you should do that.
I was mostly just going to point out, do you want to plug any other upcoming streams or anything else before we sign off?
Oh, well, yes, that's obviously the job that Claire makes me do. Claire, do you want to do anything before I get to that bit?
No, I'm good. I think we've talked about everything.
Great. So there's a load of other community-based events going on this evening. We've got a timetable of those up on the main site, which you've probably already seen if you're here. I'm, for reasons because I hate myself, I'm running a tabletop role-playing game stream at 7:30 tonight, which is what I have been working on through most of this AMA. We've also got plenty more video content that we're looking at putting out over the winter. We've got a taste for it now, so we'll hopefully be alternating the more design-based edge stuff chats with the more giving you an insight into how Profound Decisions and Empire runs things that we do with Claire and Andy in the morning. We are getting so good at that. And finally, this video is probably is now up on YouTube, which is where you're probably most of you watching it now. And if you've enjoyed it and anything we've had to say, then click the like and